I want to thank you for joining me again as we continue on with our series, From Other to One Another, our daily devotional series that accompanying our Sunday morning sermon series. I want to thank you for joining us for that as we explore the richness of our relationships with one another. Over the last 2 years, I have witnessed a number of ministers who have chosen to leave the ministry from a couple of groups that I've been involved in. Much of the reason has to do with church conflict and leadership issues and just an air of conflict within the church. Paul was dealing with some of that apparently in the Thessalonian church, and dealing with 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, where he tells the leaders, or tells the people there to respect the leaders for their hard work, and then he tells the leaders how to deal with the people. But in the midst of that, in a sandwich, the meat of the sandwich in that, where he directs the congregation with the words of respect your leaders, and he directs the leaders with here's how you need to lead your people. The meat of that conversation was be at peace with one another. Now, often what we do is we think of peace in terms of the absence of conflict, the absence of war. There may be resentment, there may be ongoing tension, but as long as you aren't fighting one another, then you're not at war. Well, as a child who grew up in the 60s, just in the shadow of the 1950s, where the Cold War was so prominent and so evident, and going into the 60s, where the Cold War was still being felt, you don't have to be raising your guns at one another to be at war. But besides that, being at peace with one another doesn't have to do with the conflict. It doesn't have to do with war. It has to do with the larger context of how peace is defined through Scripture. And peace through Scripture is not the absence of conflict, whether it be active battle or it be passive, aggressive, Cold War mentality. Being at peace with one another means that you're seeking to make things right the way that things were supposed to be from creation. When it talks about shalom through the Old Testament, the issue of shalom, the idea of shalom is God restoring the order of the garden. Be at peace with one another means that we seek to restore the order of the garden before the fallenness, before sin. We seek to have that kind of harmony that is life-giving instead of life-stealing. Think of that in terms of the garden. When they're in the garden, there is harmony, and it gives life. After they are expelled from the garden, the result of the fall is that life is in tension, and it steals life from the liver. Live at peace. Be at peace with one another. If you're a follower, follow at peace. How do you follow in such a way that you create the Eden that God had designed for us? If you're a leader, how do you lead in such a way that it creates an Eden in the experience of those who you are leading? Be at peace. Seek God's best, that which God created us for one another.